Tonight, after months of commissioning some Agenda 111 projects by the previous NPP government, Health Minister Kwabena Mintah Kando reviews none of the project belongs to the government yet, as all of them are still under the care of their respective contractors, accusing the NPP of playing politics with the project.
Facility
that has been done has not been paid for.
So it may not even be ours.
It is not the property of Ghana.
Really?
Yes. That is what it is. Ask anybody.
Details as can Brandy's conflicting cost of completing the Agenda 111 hospitals, and we have more on this particular subject as the actual NPP government has been fighting back the accusations.
His Excellency the President said that we need 1.7 billion to complete Agenda 111, and I was asking myself where from this figure. At the end of October 2024, it was $1.407 billion to complete. It's not 1.7 something billion that he's talking about.
We have more on this particular story here on Top Story, brought to you by Telecel, connecting energies and holy insecticide spray and coil. Enjoy a holy sleep. Well, tonight we know that after months of commissioning some Agenda 111 project by the previous NPP government, Health Minister Kwabena Mintah Kando is revealing that none of the project is under the care of the government, as all of them are still under the respective contractors who are still taking care of them. Now, he's thus accusing the NPP government of playing politics with such a project. Initially, a campaign promise of the Akufo-Addo administration, the project aimed to improve healthcare by building 111 hospitals nationwide. However, it remained unfinished before the government left office. But confusion deepens over the cost of completing the Agenda 111 hospitals, with officials giving conflicting figures within a week. In a State of the Nation address last week, President Mahama criticized the project state under the previous government. Listen.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sad to note that there is no dedicated funding source for such a gargantuan project. There is no dedicated funding source for this gargantuan project. Mr. Speaker, for the record, as I speak, not a single Agenda 111 hospital is operational. In any part of Ghana, I challenge you, not one is operational. Mr. Speaker, and it is worth disclosing that $400 million has already been disbursed under the Agenda 111 project. Mr. Speaker, at a rate of approximately $80 million per hospital, this $400 million spent could have completed and made operational at least 22 of those hospitals.
But the previous government has been fighting back on these claims. The Dr. Nsiasare is former presidential advisor on health. He has been speaking to my colleague Elton Broby on the Pulse.
Myself plus the consultants, we met the transition committee on the presidency. Honorable Oseche Mensah Bonsu and Honorable Dr. Omane Boama were the co-chair. Honorable Agoja was also there. We met them, we met the team, we gave our report to them. They asked for more, some other clarification, we sent it to them. So government decided that the 101 or now 104 DC hospitals plus the 2 zonal psychiatric hospitals will use our own revenue resources. The major source of revenue, which His Excellency the President says he doesn't know, which is in the handing over those, one.
The sources of funding.
The sources of funding, one, is what we call the above budget formulary allocation, ABFA. 20% of the CAPEX, which is 70% of our oil revenue. Anytime we lift oil, 20% of the 70%, the rest goes into the Heritage Fund for Agenda 111. And then direct budgetary allocation. So there's a source
of funding,
which means that anytime oil is lifted, if they will put it in the budget.
And is it indicated in the handover notes?
It's in the handing over.
So what, somebody is not reading or what? I don't
So
understand.
either somebody is not reading or not. Even, let me tell you, His Excellency the President, when he met the Monday before the State of the Nation address, he met the churches, and he said that we need 1.7 billion to complete Agenda 111. And I was asking myself, where from this figure? When we were writing the handover notes, because we started preparing it in October, at the end of October 2024, it was $1.407 billion to complete. As at the end of 31st of December 2024, we've done some payments. So it's 1.377 billion. It's not 1.7 something billion that he's talking about.
Well, that is the former government advisor on health, Dr. Insia Saride. But Joy News Research Desk has been digging up on this particular matter, and lead data analyst Isaac Kojo joins me in studio with what we are learning. Kofi, government says there's no funding source for the Agenda 111 project. What do we know now?
Well, so Kojo, we've been combing through the PIAC report and the 2024 as well as the 2023 budget. We've been trying to find answers to this claim that there is no dedicated funding source for the Agenda 111 project. Now, what we are finding or what we are learning is that this claim that there is no funding source for the Agenda 111 is completely false or misleading. And this is not true. This is what we've been finding so far. There is actually a dedicated funding source for the Agenda 111 project. And this funding source is the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, which comes from the country's oil revenue. And we've been trying to dig how much has actually gone into that fund dedicated for the construction of Agenda 111. And we understand from 2021, since the project started, to the first half of 2024, we have every detail and we have every amount that has gone into this fund for the purposes of Agenda 111. In 2021, the initial year that the project started, some $49.39 million was transferred into that account specifically for Agenda 111. 2022, an amount of $73.69 million went into the fund for Agenda 111. In 2023, 69.04 million Ghana cedis. 2024, first half of the year, 28.78 million Ghana cedis. If you add all of this from the 2021 to the 31st of June 2024, the total amount is $219.89 million. $219.89 million. Now we understand that this is not the only money that was actually dedicated to the Agenda 111. This comes from ABFA source, which is the annual budget fund from oil revenue, amounts from oil revenue. Now, non-ABFA actually also came through. That amount is 1.3 billion Ghana cedis. And if we do the conversion using the same rate, that's around $141.1 million. If you add the two, ABFA and non-ABFA, that's around $360.99 million. Now we understand that that is from 2021 to the first half of 2024. In fact, if you add the last 6 months of 2024, then definitely you'll be getting that $400 million that both the previous administration and the current administration have been quoting. So it is completely false to state that there was no funding source for Agenda 111.
Have we also been digging up on how much exactly is needed to complete once there's that controversy in there?
In fact, I mean, these are estimations going around. Some say 1.7 million, 1.5 million, 1.4 million, and some even quote 1.3 million. But what we understand is that since this is a projection or estimation of a project yet to be completed, you definitely will be having some of these discrepancies. But what we are learning is that it is not accurate to put that there is no funding source for the Agenda 111. Currently, we do not have independent data on how much it will really take to complete the project. But what we know is that the ABFA or the Ghana Investment Fund GIF is the main source for financing Agenda 111.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Kofi Ajay. Well, the Health Minister, Kwabena Mintah Kando, has been clarifying issues about the Agenda 111 project to my colleague Blazer Sogah, and he joins me in studio with what we've been hearing or what he's been saying to us. Blazer, let's start from whether or not this remains a government property.
The categorical answer is no, because that was confirmed to us by the Health Minister. The impression under which many were was that after the commissioning done by President Akufo-Addo on December 5 of last year, the hospital would have been operational this year. He says that he's been to the grounds, visited all these three supposedly completed facilities, but it turns out that there's no staffing, no equipment. And the briefing from the consultants is that, and of course the officials of the Health Ministry, is that the property has not fully been handed over to government. And he explains that this forms part of the reasons why the President, John Mahama, is unhappy about the claims that these facilities were completed and handed over to government. He's been speaking to us. We can take a listen to it.
I can send them the blueprint that we did of the staffing norms, the staff that we need, the costs. For example, all the Agenda 111, the district hospitals need about 550 health professionals and other health workers.
Across the areas that are benefited?
Across every hospital. The regional
every hospital requires over 500?
About 550.
Okay.
At full capacity. The two psychiatric hospitals need about 950 workers. And then the regional hospitals will need about 1,350. We did this thing with Ghana Health Service and the Ministerial Health Human Resources team.
And the man says that there's no action plan to recruit.
And so we had to play the sound because that's in CSRA making the claims earlier, right? But the minister is fuming over these claims, and now he says that the property is not even for the Republic of Ghana. He explains why.
And in fact, another angle of it that has even not come to the public domain is the fact that apart from the rate of completion, the outstanding commitment, the debt that they have left behind at Trede is around $8 million.
And what's this debt supposed to be for?
That is work done by the contractor that has not been paid. And the work done by the contractor at Oforikrum Municipal Hospital also stands at around $8 billion, which is about more than 100 million Ghana cedis. So the two, about 200 million Ghana cedis. And you see, it's a common principle that if you sign a contract and your partner or a party to the contract performs his part of the contract, it's only fair and good for government to also perform his part of the contract. What is the part of the contract of government? Is to honor your obligation. That is the only way the property will become the property of the state. Not until that.
So what you mean to say is that as we speak now, even these facilities,
even the work that has been done has not been paid for.
So it may not even be ours.
It is not the property of Ghana.
Really?
Yes. That is what it is. Ask anybody. It is not. So how can you commission a project that is not yours?
Well, so that's the Health Minister. There's also been confusion about how much exactly the state needs to complete the project. What did he say?
Well, he's been quite nuanced about it. So the impression we had about the Agenda 111 was that these were just 111 facilities altogether. But now he's breaking down the component because they've had briefing on the matter. It is actually 101 district hospitals. Then you have an extra number of facilities that will go to care for psychiatric facilities as well. So if you're putting everything together, that's when the branding of Agenda 111 sets in, right? So the cost is now being revised, and the understanding we have is that it's 1.9 million United States dollars, given the complete component of the entire project. He explains why.
So they promised 111 hospitals, about 101 district hospitals, and we have other psychiatric hospitals as part of the 111.
Right.
So the total for the 111 will come around 1.9 billion US dollars. But the total for the 101 district hospitals is around 1.7 billion US.
Excluding the psychiatric facilities.
And then as at the time they were leaving office, about 400 million US dollars has been expended. They've expended about 400 million US dollars. Now, it comes back to the point of doing it in phases.
Right.
Okay? If you take their own calculation, constructing each one at the rate of 18 million US dollars, their own calculation, which is another bone of contention anyway, we'll get there because you're auditing the whole thing.
Right.
Well, he also then has a response to the claims being made by Dr. Nsiasari on this project.
That's right, because if you recall, Dr. Nsiasari was then clear that part of the reason why these 3 hospitals commissioned by the former president were not operational was partly due to the unavailability of staff who were recruited. And of course, as part of the directive broadly coming through from the chief of staff, some recruitments were reversed, a reason for which partly, the facilities are not operational. The minister takes exception to that and says that's not the case because as far as recruitment of health professionals are concerned, the process started way back as of middle of last year. So there was no reversal of recruitment, and that if indeed the facility were to have been ready, then of course it should have been operational by now.
So before I get to this
yes,
question, let me also clear this misinformation in the system by again another person who is supposed to know better, Nsia Asari.
Right, the former presidential advisor.
Yes, who
on
was, I don't understand this. When they had Ministry of Health, I don't understand this whole arrangement. He had his own interest, I don't know. But, let me clear that misconception about what he's been speaking to and all that. He makes the point that apart from coming out to challenge Mr. President that all these 3 hospitals are in operation and now everybody in Ghana knows the truth, immediately I paid a working visit to the site. Then he came back to say that, they are not in operation because when we took office, we have sacked the nurses, we have sacked health workers. It's online. Check Ghana Web and all. It's quite disgraceful, to say the least. Number one, when you commissioned the project that it was supposed to be in operation, that was in December 2024, 5th. We were not in power. How could we have sacked health workers then? Quite disgraceful. Number two, let me reiterate the point that since we took office from 7 January 2025, we have never sacked any health worker in this country.
Health Minister Kwabena Minta Kando. Let's bring in Dr. Kwame Sapon-Sedu. He is Democracy and Development Fellow in Public Health at CDD Ghana. Doc, I'm grateful to you for joining us here. Now, let's start from getting an education on when exactly a project like that becomes a property of the state.
Well, thanks. When you are building any facility, forget about it being a health facility. The contractor would have to transfer the project to the state. So at the end of the contract, the state would meet with the contractor together with the consultants, and normally they go through what we call a handover meeting. And at that point, they would inspect the whole project. And sometimes some things might not be done properly. So there's a term called snagging. So they would try and do the snags to make sure that everything is up to speed. But at that point as well, unless there are repayment schedules with the contractor, it is expected that all that would be left would be the final component of the contractor's fees, so that the minute the snagging is done and everyone is okay, that money is transferred to them and they also transfer this property to the state. So that's my understanding of how these things work.
So even after commissioning, it is not a property of the state until what you're talking about is done.
You see, Kojo, this is where the disingenuity of our behaviors come in. If you remember, there was a project commissioned in Sogah where the contractor came back to write that he wasn't in favor of the commissioning because they hadn't handed the project over to the state, and that they were not even made to know. Before they were aware, some ribbons had been put up and the thing had been commissioned. It was one of the Euroject projects. So sometimes politicians do some of these things and they commission things when actually the thing is technically not the possession of the state, but they use the arms of power because they think that they have power and they can do whatever they want. But then the reality becomes, after they've done that commissioning, they cannot take over the property because the property hasn't been transferred and the process hasn't come to completion. And that's why we're here.
Well, so where we are now, there seems to be the disagreement between of exactly how much we need to complete the project. What do you know? And should that really be the focus, or the focus should be about completing the project and getting them to work?
No, it's important that we get to the bottom of this. You see, again, this whole thing is funny. If you look at the original projections, and I think you have the report that the Agenda 111 team presented to the Parliamentary Select Committee, at that time, the budgeted amount was 1.277260553.44. That was about 1.3 billion was what was budgeted for it. So do you all realize that technically what Dr. Nsiasare is saying is left to complete the project is more than what was budgeted? And that's official government documents, which you have copies of. So that's where the first part of the ingenuity starts. That the outgone government is now trying to tell us that what is left to complete the project is what the stated budgetary requirement was for in the first place. Then, if you go into the handing over notes, which all of them are referring to, they say the average cost of the property is 18 million US dollars. If you multiply that by 111, you get 1.998. If you take out 400,000, it comes to 1.588. That is different from what Dr. Nsiasare is quoting himself. Meanwhile, he quotes 18 million US dollars per hospital. So how am I to believe him? Because you've given me a figure. I have the number of hospitals. You've told me what you've expended. And I can believe what they claim has been expended because the government and the former government are saying the same thing. So all I do is the basic arithmetic. I say 118 times 11. What does that give me? How much have you spent? What is left? And that is what the health minister has been referring to. But if you look at the what they presented to the Health Select Committee as well, there's a discrepancy. And then there was also a discrepancy from what the former Minister of Health said on your network and to Assassin, which you published. When he said it was 7.65 billion that was left to complete it. So you see, Kojo, what I'm trying to say, and that was why, if you remember, on the 18th of December, I wrote to the then president-elect. Yeah. Because I saw all these things coming. And I saw that the previous government had been very disingenuous and all the figures didn't add up. So if you go into that letter, you'd realize that I quote every figure that the previous government was using and I give it the source and the official document in which it is quoted, from budgets, from Hansard Health Select Committee to statements that have been made by ministers of health. So now the confusion that the current MPP is trying to play into is confusion that I had identified as far back as the 31st of October when I was on your network with Dr. Nsiasare, and you guys have got the tape so you can play it. I had identified this, and that was what led me to write that letter to the incoming president, because I saw that if this project wasn't critically audited, we would have so many numbers being bandied around and all people would do is play politics with it. And that is where we are now. It seems I had a premonition, and that was why I wrote that letter.
Okay. But you are recommending in this letter of yours that government should explore public-private partnership, concessional loans, and grant in completing this project. But you've heard other people questioning why PPP when government has already started this project.
Well, Kojo, I think you clearly heard at this, what do you call it, economic dialogue was held, that one of the biggest problems of this country is the fact that we tend to like to lumber government with projects for which we don't have money. So look at it. You are at the IMF looking for 3 billion for liquidity support. The current government is saying they are going to renegotiate it. Meanwhile, you have between 1.3 and 1.7 billion or so that no one knows exactly what it is for just one project, Agenda 1. It's not for the entire Ministry of Health, just for Agenda 111. I mean, are we being real here? you can't get 3 billion to support your entire economy. And you think we are realistic when we say we can have 1.7 to 1.3 or to 1.7 billion just to support one aspect of our health system. Sometimes, you see, we need to have these honest conversations. And that is why I'm saying that it is unrealistic to tell the government to complete it. I have heard all these things about, and I was listening from the start about source of funding and all that. Yes, you guys have done your research and you're saying there's a source of funding. The question you ask yourself is, if there was that source of funding, how come in the budget only 11 billion Ghana cedis was allocated to Agenda 111? And that is the budget. It's there. You've got copies. And I quote that in my letter as well. How come that was what? So are we saying that the then finance minister didn't know that there was funding and the funding could fluctuate depending on how much oil was lifted? Is that what we're being told? And if there was funding, how come only 400 million US dollars out of the total fund of technically 1.988 has been dispersed? Are we saying we didn't lift enough oil then? You see, and that is why I'm saying that I don't believe in lumbering these onto the books of government because we just don't have the money. And the economic dialogue has shown. But more importantly, we need to be clear in our heads how much the project is costing, how much is left, and how we're going to fund it. And look for people who are prepared to partner government to achieve this. And for me, that's what's important.
Does that include the 3 that were commissioned, the 3 that supposedly have been completed but need some finishing touches?
Well, you heard the minister clearly, and I'm quite sure your journalists were with the minister when he went to the respective hospitals, because I've seen videos all over the place. If you go to a hospital that has been commissioned and the mortuary has been boarded up, ceilings haven't been done, tiling hasn't been done. Kojo, you're a journalist. I'm a health professional. Does that look to you like a facility that is operationalized? And I saw an MP go to one of the hospitals in Oforikro, open a consulting room and say, oh, there's a desk here, there's an air condition. Did you see a computer in that place?
Okay.
Has even the IT been put together? So you see, and these are the things, and that is why sometimes I get very passionate about some of these things. We need to have honest conversations. We cannot continue having these political propagandist conversations, sharing videos about just to please our our party basis. It's not good enough.
Doc, I'm grateful to you for joining us here. Dr. Kwame Sapon-Asiedu is Democracy and Development Fellow in Public Health with CDD Ghana. This has been Top Story, brought to you always by Telecel Connecting Energies, Holy Insecticide Spray and Coil. Enjoy Holy Sleep. Up next is News Night.
In the next 60 minutes on Newsnight, the size of the Mahama administration comes under scrutiny during the State of the Nation debate, as Minister of Government Communication says there are currently less than 60 presidential staffers compared to President Akufo-Addo's 300 plus staffers.
As I speak to you, Mr. Speaker, there are 26 presidential staffers and then 4 directors. If you put together the total number of people who work at the presidency where I operate from, they will not amount to 60, Mr. Speaker. Yet they had 337 political appointees.
While the debate is raging as former Land Minister fires back, insisting government's promise of 60 ministers has been dishonestly explained.
So if you want to see the size of government and its bearing on the national exchequer, Mr. Speaker, don't just look at ministers and deputy ministers. Look at the government holistically.
More on that shortly. It's a new edifice by the new Bank of Ghana management is to conduct value for money audit into the construction of the central bank's head office, which began with a budget of 81 million US dollars, but is now set to cost over 200 million United States dollars.
And we intend to seek authorization from the board to engage AESL for a value for money audit
into the new building.
Details as the minority leader insists no longer has been committed by the former central bank management.
The allegation of irregularity today has been put to a peaceful rest. In your submission, you highlighted the following: that even the standard costing procedure is lower than the industry market price.
A lot unfolding on the floor of Parliament. We'll get you updates shortly. Plus, focus on the scandal as lawyers for embattled former Deputy Director of the National Service Authority discloses the Bureau of National Investigations have yet to extend an invitation to the former Deputy Boss, Gifty Owari Mensah, for interrogation.
And until today, she had not been invited by BNI.
She's not being invited?
Up until today, no security agency had invited her.
And in business, inflation slows for the second consecutive month to new levels for February this year, but this was not due to some significant decline in general price levels.
And in sports, we hear from Black Stars forward Anton Semenyo, who is urging the public to rally behind the team ahead of the crucial World Cup qualifiers against Chad and Madagascar later this month.
You want to stay with us as we bring you all of this on Joy 99.7 FM here in Accra, on Love 99.5 in Kumasi, and over 30 affiliates across the country. This is Newsnight with me, Blessed Sogah.
Why we dey connect each child? He not be say we won't make one our loved ones happy.
Daddy, thanks for the tea cash, okay? I love you.
That be my daughter Angela.
Meba Kojo, I sure why tea cash naba. No papa ina jawase.
Say I go take care of my parents. It be my duty. Say make I pay my bills. I dey use Telecel cash. The suppliers for my shop there.
Hello boss, I get a Telecel cash alert too. They deliver the things right here.
I dey make them happy because I fit pay them directly to my merchant number for any network talk. Then sort my people out with Telecel cash for free.
If one a family parties, then business partners they happy. It be they make one a connection strong. Carry Telecel cash, send money, give your people for them a Telecel cash wallet store. Any day, anytime. It be free. Make you save money. Tap cool. Then make your menace smile. Anytime you go carry Telecel cash, send them money.
Telecel, connecting energies.
Where do your hopes and dreams take flight? The money you've earned, the future shining bright. At Petra, we're not just here for your retirement plan. We are here for the life you've imagined and then some. From your child's education to your dream home's door, we'll help you achieve what you're striving for. Petra is here, steady and strong. Your wealth in safe hands, where it belongs. With investments that grow at rates that compete, we build your future with every heartbeat. That's Petra, your partner. Come joy or strife, guiding you toward the dreams that define your life. For your pensions, investments, loans, and more, visit our website at petraonline.com or call 0242 435037. Petra, achieve more.
Couldn't sleep at night. Mosquitoes will be whining in my ears, bugging me all night long. Till I got a remedy. Now I'll be spraying them away with holy insecticide spray. I go spray them away with holy insecticide spray. When I sleep, me dana mada with holy insecticide spray.
Holy mosquito coil, holy multi-purpose insecticide spray. Ghana Kron Kron. For bulk purchase, call 0302 681582. This advert is FDA approved.
And you're welcome back to Newsnight here on Joy 99.7 FM and affiliates across the country. We start off from Parliament because the Minister of State in charge of Government Communications, Felix Ofosu-Kwakye, has told Parliament that there are currently less than 60 presidential staffers operating at the presidency alongside less than 60 ministers and deputies currently appointed by President John Dramani Mahama. Well, according to him, The president is serious about his commitment to cut frivolous expenditure. He insists the president will stick to his promise to appoint not more than 60 ministers and will also not go anywhere near former President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's 337 political appointees.
So President Mahama stated boldly that in the event that he was elected, he will work with 60 ministers. This compelled our colleagues on the other side to immediately promise to work with 50 ministers. Mr. Speaker, these are the same people who defended to the hilt the appointment of 125 ministers. Mr. Speaker, it will interest you to note that the worst economic outcomes that this country has seen emanated from their performance between 2017 and 2020. After that point, all they did was to try to patch up for the wrongs of 2020. That terrible economic performance was brought about by the biggest government in our history of 125 ministers. That means that you don't need a legion of ministers to be able to manage the country properly. Now, Mr. Speaker, I use myself as an example of the savings that are going to be made by having a reduced government. My colleague on the other side, and my friend, Honorable Oponkuma, who, by the way, is my constituent also, used to head a ministry called the Ministry of Information. Mr. Speaker, that ministry had 76 people working there to manage government information. Mr. Speaker, as I speak to you, it is myself, a deputy, and 5 other people who now manage government information. Mr. Speaker, if you move from 125 ministers to 60 ministers, Mr. Speaker, that means that you are going to buy 60 less Land Cruisers. You are going to buy 60 less saloon cars. You will need to provide 60 less bungalows. You will need to provide 60 less sets of political aides, executive assistants, and what have you. Now, Mr. Speaker, President Mahama has not limited himself to just reducing the numbers of ministers. In any event, as I speak to you, there are only 56 ministers. And in fact, there are 42 ministers running Ghana as we speak because deputy ministers have not been approved. If you come to the presidential staff, Mr. Speaker, if you take out the civil servants under the office of the president, under the Akufo-Addo administration, there were 337 political appointees under President Akufo-Addo. As I speak to you, Mr. Speaker, there are 26 presidential staffers, people that you can classify as presidential staffers, and then 4 directors. As I speak to you, if you put together the total number of people who work at the presidency where I operate from, they will not amount to 60, Mr. Speaker. Yet they had 337 political appointees.
Position of Felix Ofosu-Kwakye on the floor of Parliament today, but contributing to the same debate on the floor, former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources Samuel Abu-Jinapor claimed President Mahama has truly appointed less than 60 ministers, but packed the presidency with so many staffers.
The president, when he addressed this house, made the claim that he had formed the leanest and most effective government in the history of our country. So I want to submit that you can have 10 ministers, another government can have 20 ministers, and the government that has 20 ministers may have a smaller government machinery, a smaller government size than you who have 10 ministers. And I want to demonstrate that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's on record. The record is that the pegging or ranking of officials of the presidency are as follows, Mr. Speaker, since the inception of the 4th Republican dispensation. The Chief of Staff is pegged at the rank below the Speaker of Parliament, but above a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, a senior presidential advisor is pegged at the level of a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of Parliament. So a senior presidential advisor, by all intents and purposes, their salaries, emolument, conditions of service, is equivalent to a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, a presidential advisor is pegged at the level of a cabinet minister who is not a member of Parliament. A presidential staffer is pegged at the level of a non-cabinet minister who is not a member of Parliament. And a presidential aide is pegged at the level of a deputy minister. These are the rankings since the inception of the 4th Republican dispensation. Mr. Speaker, so if you want to see the size of government, and its bearing on the national exchequer. Mr. Speaker, don't just look at ministers and deputy ministers. Look at the government holistically. And Mr. Speaker, I want to submit that if you look at this government holistically, there are ministers, deputy ministers, senior presidential advisors, presidential staffers, presidential aides. President Mahama has formed arguably one of the biggest or largest governments in the history of our country as it relates to the cost on the national exchequer. Mr. Speaker, why do I say this? Take, for example, the president has appointed Dr. Valerie Sogah as senior presidential advisor in charge of government affairs. Her rank is a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of parliament. So her salary, her emolument, conditions of service, everything to do with her office is at the same rank as a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of parliament. Mr. Speaker, he's appointed a presidential advisor on economy.
Well, it's a good time now to take it to Parliament because that's where all of the action is, plus a lot more happening. Kojo Sanchez, our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent, joining us now with more. And in fact, Kojo, the former Information Minister himself, Kojo Ponkruma, has also been wading in, fighting the government for many unexplained economic policies. Let's get to it, Kojo.
Right here, Blessed, we've been hearing from Kojo Ponkruma, who believes that John Dramani Mahama's government have not hit the nail right on the head when it comes to its economic fundamentals. He says even a 24-hour economy has not been properly explained. Different government officials explain it in a different way, and that instead of coming to Parliament to lament, the president should have put before the House his economic programs so that Parliament could have been properly seized with those issues and then discuss them.
The real issues that you campaigned on, the things that the millions of young people who were singing Kwen Kwen are waiting to hear you deliver on, they get lost in the cracks. And I want to spend some time reminding you of the things that you campaigned on and the things that many people were hoping that when the president mounted the podium, he will be explaining how he will be delivering on them. The president campaigned on the cost of living crisis. He campaigned that transport fares were high and were still going high, and that if he's given an opportunity to come to power, he will roll out a program to tackle it. Did anybody hear the president here explain how he was going to tackle the phenomenon of transport fares that are going up? He spent all the time lamenting and trying to blame the heads of state of the past, just like he did in 2013. The president campaigned on high electricity bills and the fact that if he has an opportunity to come to power, he will introduce measures to tackle it. When he mounted the podium on Thursday, the expectation was that he will lay out a program, which program we now in Parliament will spend time debating. Did anybody hear the president explain how he's going to tackle electricity tariffs that keep going up? For many months, when the president was campaigning, he was speaking about high food inflation. When he mounted the podium, I was hoping to hear him outline how his program to deal with high food prices. I didn't hear it. I don't know if colleagues heard the president outline it here so that we could be debating it by now. Three major things that I want to draw the government bench's attention to. Number one, stop the propaganda. You have won the election already. You don't need to do more propaganda. The propaganda will not create jobs. It won't put food on the tables of people. It won't put clothes on the backs of people. Rather, bring your governance programs. Till date.
Well, Kojo, so that's the position of Kojo. How about a response from the majority side?
Well, the Minister of State in charge of government communication, Felix Ofisu-Kwakye, shot back, insisting that the NPP government cannot teach the NPP lessons on the economy, following what is the NPP's reckless mismanagement of the economy. Listen to him.
Ghanaians have lived through the worst economic crisis in a generation. Ghanaians have lived through the worst economic crisis under the Fourth Republic, if not in the entire history of Ghana. Mr. Speaker, since the year 2020, or immediately after the elections of that year, the Ghanaian economy has been in a tailspin. For the first time in decades, a Ghanaian government defaulted on debt payment. When President Mahama was leaving power in January 2017, Ghana could fulfill its debt obligations. At a point, our debt to GDP ratio under the MPP leapfrogged to 104%. It meant that if theoretically we were to pick all of our GDP and pay our debt with it, we will still require another 4% to do so. It is the worst in our history under the Fourth Republic.
And Kweku Asante, you might want to stay on with us because a lot more happening on the floor itself with the BOG Central Governor appearing before the House. But it's a good time to hear from Samuel Abujinapos, MP for Damongo, former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, also one-time Deputy Chief of Staff. Thank you for your time here on Newsnight. First off, the debate about, the size. Is it really a matter subject to debate, knowing that even on the face value in terms of the ministerial list, the NDC is doing less than your numbers?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, Evans. The point I made was that when you talk about the size of government or government machinery, you will lose the point if you just look at the face value of the number of ministers or deputy ministers a president has appointed. And I said it goes beyond that. A particular president can appoint 20 ministers and deputy ministers. Another can appoint 40. And yet, you will find that the size of the government of the 20 ministers is more than that of the 40 ministers. Because at the end of the day, let's face it, it is really about the burden that the government size has on the national exchequer or the national treasury. And I made the point, for example, that if you look at the pegging of government officials, you will see that the chief of staff is ranked above a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of parliament, but below the speaker of parliament. A senior presidential advisor is a cabinet minister who doubles as a member of parliament. And so if you find a senior presidential advisor, the senior presidential advisor, by all intents and purposes, in substance, in terms of their benefits, emoluments, conditions of service and office, is equivalent to a cabinet minister who is a member of parliament. Presidential advisor is a cabinet minister who is not a member of parliament. So is a presidential staffer equivalent to a non-cabinet minister who is not a member of parliament. And a presidential aide is equated to a deputy minister. And so if you take, for example, the senior presidential advisor the president is appointed, presidential advisor on the economy, presidential advisor for 24-hour economy, presidential advisor and special aide to the president, presidential advisor on national anti-corruption program, presidential advisor on diaspora affairs. Then you have a presidential advisor on Black Star experience, and you have 16 presidential advisors responsible for the 16 regions of our country. And you have several other presidential staffers and advisors. You, for example, have director of the presidency in charge of agriculture and agribusiness. And yet you have the ministry which is responsible for agriculture and agribusiness. And you still have the Ministry of Trade and Agribusiness. And then it goes on and on and on and on. I've done the count. It's almost 100 of such appointees.
But clearly, a minister of state obviously will have agencies under him. The bureaucracy will be more, and the cost eventually might be more. Correct?
No, I'm talking about the office officials. I mean the individual officials, and the impact that it has on the national exchequer. And when you merge ministries, so for example, if you take, you tell me one of the ministries that have been made, the agencies don't get collapsed. The agencies just shift from one ministry to the other, or the agencies are put together to be put under one ministry. The bureaucracy doesn't change. It's not downsized in any form or shape. So really, the impact on the national exchequer tends to be in respect of the individual appointees. Look, I'm not even coming to any conclusions. I'm just sounding a caution, and I'm just asking that we should expand the debate and the discussion. It is welcome and it's commendable that President Mahama has formed a government of 60 ministers and deputy ministers. That is a lean government. Whether or not it will be effective, we live to see. But I'm talking about the size of government or government machinery as it relates to is burden on the national exchequer. And I'm saying I'm afraid that when you do a critical scrutiny of the size of this government vis-a-vis the various senior presidential advisors, presidential staffers, presidential aides, I'm sorry, you may come to the conclusion that in terms of the cost saving, you will be saving none.
You had 337 presidential staffers, correct?
No, I don't have that on hand, but I'm saying let's do the counting. I mean, that is where you will get to know the real size of a government. I mean, I made the point, for example, that if you say there's a chief of staff under this government, there was a chief of staff under, they've been a chief of staff under every government in the fourth Republican dispensation. And therefore, you cannot come to the conclusion that's an addition or that's an extra burden on the national exchequer.
But here at Joy News, we've done our research, and our research desk is indicating to us that we're looking at a colossal figure of over 30 million cedis that will be saved as a result of scrapping or perhaps doing away with 60 plus or 50 plus ministers. So in terms of the figures, clearly we're saving costs.
Yeah, how do you come to that conclusion?
You have any reason to doubt that?
No, I'm not doubting that. I just want to be enlightened on how you came to that conclusion, because I'm just sounding a caution that the size of government goes beyond ministers and deputy ministers. You recall there was a time in Ghanaian governance history where the concept of special assistants became a big issue. So you have one minister, one deputy minister, and then you say you have a smaller government, and yet the minister has, say, 4 or 5 special assistants. And the special assistants are all drawing from the national pay. And the special assistants are pegged at the same level as, say, deputy ministers or ministers of state. On the face of it, you would have reduced the size of your government in terms of ministers and deputy ministers. But when you do a more holistic, contextual analysis, you will see that size of the government is not necessarily reduced.
Perhaps
that is exactly the point I'm making.
Perhaps what we also might want to do now is to bring in Isaac Kufieje, who's a data research analyst here at Joy News, and we've been doing our checks. Let's explain that so we get the response from Samola Jenapo briefly. How did we arrive at this figure of 30 million plus in terms of savings by just cutting down some 50 plus ministers?
Well, so we've been looking at the budgetary allocation of this ministry that were actually scrapped, and according to our analysis, this ministries in terms of their budgetary allocation, I mean, running the ministry, manpower and everything, if you add it together in a year, you're talking about some 9 million Ghana cedis going into one ministry.
That's just budgetary allocation average
for
on the
9 years,
right.
for just a year. So if you do the math for 4 years, from 2025 to 2028, then that should be around some 36 million Ghana cedis.
Approximately that figure. But then we heard from the former minister, who's now pointing out to us that the agencies will just be shifted, right? Because you're not moving. The fact that you remove a minister doesn't mean that the agencies won't be shifted to another sector responsible minister.
Exactly. I mean, so what we also found is that if you look at the compensation of employee budgets, that would definitely still be civil servants who will be working. But in terms of running the ministries, I mean, if you look at the building, drivers, I mean, if you look at running the ministries itself, also comes at a certain cost. The ex gratia of the minister and his deputies, I mean, you had some ministries that had a substantive minister and 2 deputies, for instance. All of those things were taken into consideration. But in fact, we also have to put on record that, I mean, there are new positions under this administration that we have not seen before the actual novel.
Okay, so it suffices, isn't it, in terms of our explanation and how we arrived at a conclusion?
No, Evans, the work you've done is brilliant and it should be commended. But I'm just saying that let us expand the discourse and let us do the research. Let's expand it, because take for example, there used to be the Ministry of Works and Housing, correct? And then you had the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources. Today, you have the Ministry of Works and Housing and Water Resources. So water resources is not gone anywhere. Ghana Water Company moves to the Ministry of Works and Housing. That agency will stay. Sanitation has moved to local government. So the bureaucracy for water resources is not collapsed. The bureaucracy for sanitation has not collapsed. Yes, you are right. you don't have a minister for sanitation anymore. You will not have an additional minister for water resources. But you did not have a presidential staffer for 24-hour economy. You did not have a presidential staffer for diaspora affairs. You did not have a presidential staffer for Black Star experience. You did not have a director for agribusiness. And I have a whole host of them. When I did the count, it's about 100 of them. And I'm saying to you that these people, the cost of maintaining these officials is equivalent to maintaining a minister of state. And I'm saying that on authority. I was deputy chief of staff. As deputy chief of staff, I was pegged or ranked as a cabinet, non-MP cabinet minister. And so my ex-gratia was equivalent to a cabinet minister who was not a member of parliament. I knew people at the presidency who were presidential aides whose emoluments from President Rawlings' time,
right,
and their ex-gratia was equivalent to that of a deputy minister. That has been the ranking from 1993 to date. So I'm not down the government. I'm not criticizing the government, but I'm saying that the discussion should be a lot more nuanced and broader.
Right.
So let me give you one last point.
We need to go briefly.
Presidential staffers, 16 presidential staffers. I'm submitting and contending that these 16 presidential staffers are in essence, in substance, and indeed and in fact, deputy regional ministers when it comes to the cost on the taxpayer. And you can check that out.
Okay. We'll definitely do that, and that's why we're grateful for your time. That's Samuel Abujinapo, MP for Damongo, and also one-time Deputy Chief of Staff, and also a former Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. Blessed here, by the way, and we're grateful for your time. Let's stay in Parliament because the Bank of Ghana Governor, Dr. Johnson Asiama, says there will be a value for money audit into the construction of a new central bank head office here in Accra. If you're not aware of it, the facility, which started under the previous governor, Dr. Ernest Addison, was initially planned to cost some $81 million, but various variations, the cost has now, as we understand, been shot up to some $261.8 million, with $230 million already paid to the contractor. Listen to the governor briefing Parliament on this development, on establishing whether there was value for money in the first place in terms of the construction of the edifice.
Well, this project was initiated before our tenure. We are fully aware of our responsibility to manage resources efficiently and to operate with transparency. Mr. Speaker, the reconstituted Bank of Ghana board will be sworn in next week, and the board will begin reviewing some of these legacy issues. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, we have scheduled for board agenda a detailed briefing on the new Bank of Ghana building by the project team members, and we intend to seek authorization from the board to engage AESL for a value for money audit into the new building. We believe this will bring clarity to the matter, and we believe this will bring closure to the issue of our new Bank of Ghana building.
The central bank governor has also been explaining other cost items, including some $11 million for furnishings.
Mr. Speaker, in 2013, the land was acquired at West Reach, and I am informed that a competitive procurement process that was approved by the Public Procurement Authority led to the selection of Mrs. Golkey Properties Limited as the contractor under a turnkey arrangement. Mr. Speaker, the project was initially valued by the PPA at $81.8 million, but later increased to $121.1 million after the Bank of Ghana requested for re-evaluation. This was revised again to $222.8 million, and I'm just rounding off, Mr. Speaker. After the redesign and inclusion of building management systems, the total project cost increased to $261.8 million. Mr. Speaker, as of February this year, a total of $230 million approximately has been paid towards the project.
And I want to bring in Kweku Asante because there's more happening on the floor of Parliament. Kweku, this and many others, because we know that the minority is taking exception to the briefing today by the central bank governor. Tell us more, and then we get to the latest on the floor as we speak.
Well, yes, Blessed. All these statements, comments or statements were made by the Bank of Ghana governor. The minority had raised issues with the procedure adopted and insisted that given some of these matters, the process that the majorities had admitted in getting the Bank of Ghana governor to come were ones that did not have to go through that process. But the minority side were not ready to allow the Bank of Ghana governor in at all. The speaker had to suspend for about 10 minutes to engage. When they came back, ultimately a ruling was made that the process were properly done, and then the Bank of Ghana governor did come in. We also heard from the minority leader after this briefing, who did say that in his view, the erstwhile government and the erstwhile administration of the Bank of Ghana management had not done anything wrong because of his understanding of the in Parliament. And then we also heard from Mahamaya, who also insists that there must be some explanation for why the Bank of Ghana head office ballooned from 80 million cedis to the current figure of 261.8 million.
And briefly before you go, we understand there's a lot developing on the floor of the House now. Bring us up to speed with the aspect concerning the revocation of appointments.
Yes, the minority have filed a private member's motion seeking to investigate and seeking to actually condemn the Chief of Staff's revocation of appointment made after December 7, 2024. That motion, just before it will be moved, the majority leader was on his feet trying to arrest the motion from being moved. He insists that these matters are all currently sub judice. These are matters currently before the courts. There's an abuse case before the Supreme Court and other actions that have been filed at the various superior courts of judicature, which is that he does not believe that this motion must be moved. As I speak to you, the minority leader is on his feet, justifying why this motion must be moved. Ultimately, what he is seeking is to say that the Chief of Staff acted in contravention of good governance principles when he sought to revoke the appointment of persons employed after December 7th.
Right.
When the leaders make their point, the expectation is that the Speaker will make a ruling as whether or not this motion should be moved or not. And the person presiding today is the first Deputy Speaker, Bernard Ahiafo.
And that name obviously rings a bell and strikes a tone of what might likely happen on the floor of the House. But we'll wait to see what the outcome will be. Kweku Asante, our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent, bringing us up to speed with that and more. Time now for us to look at what's happening in the world of business. George is here. He's been to the BOG head office already. And George, I'm sure that you've enjoyed some good time there, isn't it? A very beautiful edifice, isn't it?
Well, of course, if you look at the structure, it actually, if you engage the Bank of Ghana, their argument is also about the fact that even look at hosting the West African Central Bank as well and expanding their operations to other areas and trying to consolidate all the human resource personnel.
Futuristic.
So it could also be, but on any day, there could be justification for the concerns about the cost of the building. Therefore, that's why Parliament is doing the necessary scrutiny. Well, coming up in business, inflation slows for second consecutive month to new levels for February this year. But this is not due to any significant decline in general price levels. And Bank of Ghana left with a little over $31 million in outstanding payments for its new corporate office, as the regulator commits to focusing on its primary mandate. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Kingdom Books and Stationery, your number one-stop shop for all your office essentials. Sinter Stanks and Pepsodent, Herbal and Charcoal.
MNC Group is a leading investment holding company with expertise in mineral and food commodities trading, precious metal refinery, real estate development, logistics, and energy. With individually registered companies, our headquarters is located in Accra, Ghana, with our operational offices in Dubai, UAE, Hong Kong, and Guangzhou in China, Johannesburg, South Africa, Virginia, United States of America, and Milan, Italy. We connect business markets and drive growth. Trust us to maximize value in every deal.
Call us on 030-255-1917 or 030-255-1918. Send us an email at mncgroup@mncgroupgh.com.
MNC Group, totally reliant.
Son, we are so proud of you for setting up this hospital. I really love those hospital beds and waiting chairs. By the way, did you import them?
No, Dad, I didn't. I actually got them from Kindle Books and Stationery right here in Ghana.
Wow. We also bought our office supplies, safes, executive desks and chairs from Kingdom, and they gave us expert advice on how to set up our office.
Guys, that makes 3 of us. I also got our sofa and bedroom sets, plus our dining hall furniture for our new home from Kingdom.
Wow, Mom, that makes 4 of us. I usually get my stationery items from Kingdom, and my teacher also mentioned that our classroom furniture was provided by Kingdom.
So there you have it. Whenever you're thinking about setting up an office or acquiring furniture for your home, etc., Kingdom Books and Stationery should be your first point of call. With over 40 years experience in the industry, we stock and supply a wide variety of globally sourced office and home furniture, stationery and equipment. Visit our head office, Osu Akwaje, or our office near the Osu Stadium. We're also in Tema Community 1, opposite Olam SHS, Kumasi KNUST campus, UCC Cape Coast, and now at the Marina Mall, Airport City. Or call us 0302-764101, 764209, or 762792. Visit our website www.kingdomgh.com.
Welcome back to Business on Newsnight. Let's now settle for the details. Inflation rate slowed for the second consecutive month to new level for the month of February this year to reach 23.1%. There is more in this report.
The Ghana Statistical Service data showed that for the second consecutive month, inflation dropped to new levels, whilst when you track inflation from February last year to February 2025, it also declined to January and went ahead to decline last month. Food inflation also slowed marginally to 28.1%, while non-food inflation went down marginally. When it comes to inflation rate on locally produced items, there was some marginal decline, as the same can be said for imported inflation. However, food and non-alcoholic beverage recorded the highest inflation of almost 28.1%. Further breakdown also showed that vegetables, tubers, and plantain were the main drivers of both annual and the month-on-month inflation rate. Also, the price of tomatoes witnessed some significant jump when it comes to tracing its price inflation over a year. On the regional level, Upper West recorded the highest food inflation of 49.8%.
And that is a Business Desk report. Meanwhile, Government Statistician Professor Soma Kobnenim has been explaining why the decline had nothing to do with prices slowing on the market.
So although we are recording a slowdown in the rate of inflation, we should all leave here having the mindset that this slowdown in inflation is not as a result of current interventions, it's not as a result of current reductions in or slowdown in prices, but it's really as a result of the base which is influencing that. That is also seen on
is seen both on a year-on-year basis and on a month-on-month basis. Historically, between January and February through to March, we see some stability in the rates of inflation because we've just come off the festive season. The harvest season has not really kicked in, so we normally see some stability between January and March in terms of the rates of inflation. So what we are recording here now with a marginal drops, a month-on-month perspective and a year-on-year perspective is not significantly different from what has been the case in the past.
Government statistician Professor Samuel Kobina-Eni. Now, the Bank of Ghana has indicated that it's still left with some $31 million in outstanding payments for the new corporate office. Now, this was after the Bank of Ghana Governor Dr. Johnson Isiama revealed that this in Parliament today, that it has tripled. Actually, the cost has tripled from its initial cost to this new level. While the governor has revealed that they are committed to focusing on their core mandate.
Mr. Speaker, it is important to emphasize the Bank of Ghana remains fully focused on its primary responsibilities, which is to maintain price stability, which is to ensure financial sector resilience, and which is to foster economic growth. These are the priorities that guide our actions. As an independent central bank, we recognize, Mr. Speaker, that public trust is fundamental to our operations, and that trust is built on transparency, sound decision-making, and a demonstrated commitment to prudent financial management. Mr. Speaker, we want to assure this Honorable House that the new board will exercise its oversight responsibilities efficiently.
And that is Bank of Ghana Governor Dr. Johnson Isiama. The country's economic performance over the last 2 decades has been described as a tale of high and lows. Now, that's according to a new report by the Africa Sector for Economic Transformation. It also maintained that human well-being has seen steadily improvement with significant reduction in poverty over the 2 decades. The report showed that growth over the 2 decades has not met expectations for a country like Ghana, looking at how we've grown over the years. Mavis Owusu-Gyamfi is president of the African Center for Economic Transformation.
We will also be doing, conversations with the new ministers who are in place on the findings, the recommendations. We'll be talking to NDC, etc. Our job is to get it into the government system to inform policy. So wherever we have an opportunity to use it to advise and inform policy, we are doing it. And so that's why on the other side, the flip side, we're talking to you, because we also want you to know what we are discussing with government, so that you can, in your interactions with government, you can also hold government to account for what they are doing to progress on the depth framework for transformation.
Mavis Owusu-Gyamfi is President and Chief Executive of the African Center for Economic Transformation. Let's turn our attention to the stock market, and shares of MTN still doing well on the market, and some are linking it to their sterling financial performance or results released by the group that was last week. It went up by 9 pesos and is now trading at 3 Ghana cedis in 19 pesos. That of Standard Chartered Bank was also up by 2 pesos, and it's now worth more than 25 Ghana cedis, 4 pesos. Other shares on the market also witnessed some significant changes in their prices. One can talk about Ben Soil Palm Plantation, Calm, and also that of Clydestone as well. And that's all for business on News Night. Back to you.
Well, Dr. George, I like to call him. I'll be following you to, tour the splendor of the edifice we're talking about.
I've actually been there already.
Oh, I see. I see.
So
Great.
You missed that opportunity.
Anyway, too sad. Just get out of the studio now. That's George Wiafe with the latest in the world of business. Time now for sports, and in fact, when I was thinking about the tour, I was thinking about using the GFA bus to the headquarters of the VOG. I'm wondering if you have your share already.
No, I haven't. Joyce haven't received any bus yet. But
you'd be a good driver, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I'm a decent driver.
What's coming up in sports?
Indeed, some anti-corruption, campaigners have asked some immediate investigations to be conducted into that very issue, and we'll be talking more about it. But let's turn attention to the World Cup now, because the Black Stars have got a game against Chad and Madagascar later this month, 21st of March.
Do we still need to be hopeful?
Yes. Talking about hope, after their failure to qualify for the AFCON, the team knows that the World Cup is now their major objective. They need to qualify to at the very least appease the Ghanaian public. Well, one of those games will be played at the Accra Sports Stadium, and the concern is that Ghanaians might not turn up to support the team. That is something that the players are trying to avoid, why they've taken to the various platforms urging the Ghanaian public to put everything behind them and rally behind the team ahead of these two crucial World Cup qualifiers. Here's Antoine Semenyo.
As you know, we've got our World Cup qualifiers against Chad and Madagascar, and I'm just reaching out to say, continue praying for us, continue being with us, continue supporting us. We need you more than ever. Those two games are so important and crucial for qualification in the World Cup. So please continue praying for us, continue supporting us, be there for us and support us in the games and much. We look forward to seeing you, and hopefully we can get 2 wins.
That's Antoine Semenyo, Black Stars forward there. And Blessed, I'm sure you're familiar with the halftime show on the Super Bowl. You're familiar with that. The NFL, it was currently done, Kendrick Lamar and all of that. Well, guess what? It's 2026 World Cup. FIFA has announced that they're going to have a similar thing, the World Cup, halftime show at the World Cup. And the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, was the one who disclosed that. It's still unclear how they are looking to execute that, within the 15-minute break that exists, between the two halves. It's still unclear how they're going to execute that. But
a Ghanaian artist, maybe?
Maybe. Not sure who's going to feature, but we'll wait to see. We know that the World Cup 2026 will be hosted in Canada, Mexico, and the USA. So we'll wait to see how all of that will unfold. But later tonight, big game happened between Paris Saint-Germain and Liverpool in the Champions League last 16. The last time these two sides met was in 2018. Liverpool, when they hosted Paris Saint-Germain, ended 3-2 and later lost away in France 2-1. Tonight, they face off again in the last 16 as they battle for a spot in the quarterfinals. And Slot is the head coach of Liverpool, and already they are tipping Liverpool to win the this year's Champions League, but he's been a little cautious about all of those predictions.
I think it's a great fixture to look forward to for everyone who loves football. Both teams scored so many goals this season. Quite similar playing styles, maybe not completely, but the ideas are quite similar. Both teams like to have the ball. Both teams work really hard without the ball. So I can come up with 6, 7, or 8 similar things that both teams are doing. So yeah, interesting fixture to look forward to.
Yeah, that's Anslot ahead of the game. Well, not just Liverpool, we're playing. Barcelona will be in action against Benfica, and a few other. Bayern Munich will also be playing Bayern Leverkusen. Some great German derby happening there at the Allianz Arena later tonight. Well, just before I go though, Blazer, when you hear $1 billion, I'm not sure what comes to mind, but that is going to be the total price package for the Club World Cup that will take place in the United States this year. The Club World Cup. There is the World Cup and there's a Club World Cup. $1 billion is the total
I've always
price.
been wondering the selection criteria though for the clubs.
Yeah, I mean, it's, the winners of the Champions League, the winners of the respective, leagues, and then the past winners. A few of the past winners have been assembled. There's a 32-team tournament, so Chelsea is in there, Real Madrid is in there, and we are waiting to see how it all fares. But we understand that the total price package is amounting to some $1 billion. There are some African teams also in there. Esperance is there, Al Ahly is there, so maybe in the subsequent years, Kumasi, Asante Kotoko, and Hartlepool will qualify, and who knows?
They ought to make
go and
it.
win the $1
At
billion.
least
$1
billion could bail us out. We're looking for 3.
Imagine Kotoko bringing $1 billion to Ghana.
Anyway, grateful as well for the latest in the world of sports. But back to Some other news for you, because fresh details are emerging now regarding the arrest and prosecution of the former Deputy Director of the National Service Authority, Gifty Owari-Mensah, as her lawyers are now revealing to Joy News that she's not been invited for any interrogation. Earlier, government communications, including the President's pronouncements during the State of the Nation address, indicated that security agencies are on a manhunt for the former deputy boss of the National Service Authority and others who allegedly got involved in the NSS ghost name scandal. This position was also indicated by the minority leader himself, Alexander Penyumakin, who spoke to me earlier at the Kotoka International Airport ahead of Gifty Owari's return on Tuesday.
She did not run away from the jurisdiction. She had traveled out. She traveled out freely. She came back to Ghana. She's entered the country freely. However, the NIB officials reached out to me and that they needed her. They have also reached out to her lawyers, and the lawyers have been in that discussions with them. Today, she's in town. She will make herself available. Whatever that they have to ask of her, I'm sure she will be able to deal with it. And I'm saying that nobody has harassed her as far as I'm concerned, because I've been following, engaging her, and so far, nobody has harassed her.
And that's the minority leader, Alexander Penyumakin. It is, however, turning out that the Bureau of National Investigations has yet to extend any invitation to Gifty Owari for interrogation. Listen to the lawyer, Nana Eje Bafuewa.
He knows that such orders are made in respect of persons that are considered a flight risk. Why would you, in the circumstance of these facts, consider her flight risk? Does he know that up until today, she had not been invited by BNI?
She's not being invited?
Up until today, no security agency had invited her.
Well, that's shocking news to us, is it? The minority leader.
On record. The minority leader. Mm-hmm. I am putting it on record. Gifty Owari, up until today, has not been invited by any security agency.
Lawyer Nana Eje Bafuewa, speaking as lawyer for Gifty Owari. Well, in the health sector as well, the Health Minister Kwabena Mintah-Kando has served notice that his outfit will not pay a dime of taxpayers' funds to contractors executing the Agenda 111 if they fail to meet the desired standards. That project has been subject of some political debate, as former Finance Minister Dr. Amin Adams, who led a press conference dubbed the True State of the Nation, alleged that at least 3 hospitals, including one in Trede, Ahanta, and some other areas, were successfully completed, equipped, and commissioned before President Akufo-Addo left office. However, I've been engaging the sector minister, Kwabena Mintah-Kando, who says the claims are not accurate.
If they had money, why were they not paying those commitments? As I speak to you now, work that has been done by contractors that has not been paid is in excess of 1 billion Ghana cedis. So why haven't they paid? I don't know why people can lie like this. Is blatant falsehood. It's not true. We don't have any reliable source of funding for this project. I don't know where he's speaking from. And as I started my submission, I told you I've been a ranking member of the committee. Right. And even in their own document they provided to Parliament, they did their projection as beyond 2027 for completion. And I've been on your program before. I've showed this document. You have a copy. So they themselves, they knew.
So will you pay them? You're saying you're not going to pay them? Is that the case, or you will be paying them?
Nobody has said you're not going to pay them. If you sign a contract, Ghana government has signed a contract with a company. It's binding. You inherit, assets and liabilities. And so once Ghana government has signed a contract with them, we will study the contract. Because
you're not happy with the work done. That's why I'm asking the question.
My personal feeling about the work doesn't matter. The right thing must be done.
Kwabena Mintah-Kando there, and for this week's episode of Climate Focus, we take you to the University of Energy and Natural Resources in Doma-Bono region, where the next generation of climate champions is being trained. As the world grapples with rising temperatures and extreme weather conditions, students of the Department of Atmospheric and Climate Science are learning how to tackle these challenges head-on. From cutting-edge research to innovative solutions, we explore how Ghana is equipping young minds to combat one of the pressing challenges of our time. Mahmoud Nuruddin now reports.
The Department of Atmospheric and Climate Science at the University of Energy and Natural Resources offers a comprehensive program that equips students with the knowledge and skills to understand and address climate change. But it doesn't stop in the classroom. Students are working closely with local communities to raise awareness about climate change and its impacts. Sharon Asenso and Deborah Nketia are final year students.
I want to let people know that climate change is real and so are the solutions. They actually exist.
Coastal areas in Takrady experience flooding over the years due to changing climate effects. That is why I am here to be educated on issues of climate change.
The department is not only educating the next generation of climate experts, but also empowering them to be agents of change in their own communities.
And Mohammed Nuruddin there with the latest in the series of our climate focus. It's also Ghana Month. Don't forget that centuries ago, the people of Akwemu, led by the fearless warrior Asamani, launched a daunting attack that changed history. They defeated the Danes and took control over the Kushambo Castle, which is now known as the Osu Castle, a key stronghold in the Gold Coast then. But did you know that till today, the Akwemu still holds on to the symbolic reminder of their victory? In our Ghana Month series, Kojo Youngson takes you back in time to relive this bold takeover and its lasting legacy.
The Akwemu Kingdom is a kingdom of warriors. I like to think of them as the forgotten warrior kingdom. These strong, strapping men of this kingdom are the ones whose footprint is marked across the history of Ghana. They have conquered tribes from all the way in the western region, straight across to the Volta region and beyond.
Meet Nana Semeshia. He is the curator of the Akwemu Royal Museum and custodian of the rich history of his people, dating back to the 11th century.
Welcome to Akwemu Museum, the citadel of Akan tradition and custom. But the most important thing, which may interest you, are the Christianborg Castle keys.
These are the keys to Christianborg Castle.
The original keys to the Christianborg Castle,
which is known as Osu Castle.
Yeah. Akwemu had conquered the whole coast, and Europe was in Christianborg Castle, so he wanted to conquer Europe as well. So what he did was sent his nephew, Asmani, to go there and learn. He went there, he learned the language. He was very nice with the governor. He won the heart of the governor. So he became the interpreter and everything. So one day he came to visit the uncle and said, "Uncle, now I'm the main man here. So what do we do? Give me some people, because you can't fight the Danes from outside. You have to fight them from within." So the men went there with their arms hidden under their cloth. And what happened? Upon buying the arms, they switched the guns on the whites. When the Danish king sent emissaries to Akwemu, they bargained and said, "Fine." Akwemu says, "If you want to buy the castle back, I want to sell the castle to you 1,600 pieces of silver. And the second condition is, I want the locks to be changed and give me the original keys."
The old keys.
The old keys to be kept as a trophy. So you see the ingenuity in this case. But fortunately, they couldn't pay all. They paid parts, and still the Danish crown owe Akwemu.
And you know, it's interesting because it tells us how much the Akwemu king back then understood and appreciated symbolism.
Yeah.
So he understood that there will be a day when somebody will deny that such a thing ever happened.
Yes.
And so he wanted evidence.
Evidence.
To prove that he was once
upon a time, conquered the castle, and he was dead.
That's amazing.
And Kojo Yanks in there, giving us a sense of taking us back in time, learning more about the people of Akwemo. Don't forget as well that we are discovering our identity tomorrow and reflecting on 68 years as a nation under the theme Reflect, Review and Reset. Well, the Independence Day celebration will be kicking off tomorrow with preparations of the highly anticipated event underway. We know that this time round there'll be a departure from the big parades that we know, and instead the activities will be centered at the forecourts of the Jubilee House. Expect Joy News to bring you updates. Plus, our special coverage will be coming up on all of our platforms. And that's all we have for you in this package of News Night here on Joy 99.7 FM and affiliates across the country. It's also the month of women.
It is.
And that's why we're excited about this. Guess who's back?
Hi.
Nimwado is back. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, and this month is very iconic, isn't it? You're representing women,
right?
Making the big comeback. And we're talking about women in agribusiness as well.
Yes, we are. So the National Women's Summit and Expo 2025 this year is focusing on women in agribusiness. I'm not going to say much. Just stay tuned in. Strong and Sassy is coming up.
It's coming up right up next. And that's all we have for you here on Newsnight. I am Blessed Sogah. Log on to myjoyonline.com. More stories for you there.